In the brutal trenches of the NFL, few names commanded the kind of respect Gene Upshaw did. A man built not just for the game, but for legacy. He was the embodiment of Raider toughness. Week after week, year after year, he stood tall on the front lines, protecting his quarterback and paving the way for greatness. For over a decade, he was not just a Raider, he was the Raiders. But what happens when a legend disappears from the spotlight? This is not just the story of a Hall of Famer. It is not just about dominance on the field or leadership off it. This is about the silence that followed, the questions that went unanswered, the way time quietly moved on, and how the football world somehow forgot one of its fiercest warriors. Gene Upshaw's story is one of triumph, but it ends in a way few saw coming, and what makes it truly heartbreaking is how many people barely remember it at all. Forged in the fire, the rise of Gene Upshaw. Before the roaring stadiums, before the gold jacket and the accolades, Gene Upshaw was just a determined young man from Robstown, Texas, a town where hard work was not optional, but a way of life. Born in 1945, Gene grew up in a world that demanded resilience. That same unbreakable spirit would shape the way he approached everything, especially football. He played his college ball at Texas A&I, far from the glitz of powerhouse schools. But his dominance on the field was impossible to ignore. His size, strength, and rare speed for a lineman caught the eyes of Raider scouts. And in 1967, Gene Upshaw was drafted in the first round. From that moment forward, his legacy began. On the offensive line, Upshaw was a force of nature. He did not just block defenders, he punished them. With a combination of brute power and precise technique, he quickly became the cornerstone of the Raiders' offensive unit. He started in 207 straight games, a testament to both his durability and relentless drive. His protection helped guide the Raiders to 3 Super Bowl appearances, with victories in Super Bowl 11 and 15, anchoring an era defined by toughness and swagger. But Gene was more than muscle. He was a leader. His voice echoed through the locker room, not with arrogance, but with authority. Teammates listened, coaches trusted him, opponents respected him. He became the heart of the silver and black, embodying everything the franchise stood for: grit, pride, and loyalty. In an era where offensive linemen were rarely celebrated, Gene Upshaw stood tall. He broke barriers, becoming one of the first African-American linemen to dominate at the highest level. And with every snap, he reshaped what it meant to be great at a position that rarely sees the spotlight. By the time he retired in 1981, he had been to 6 Pro Bowls, earned 2 first-team All-Pro selections, and helped build a dynasty. But perhaps his greatest impact was not just in his play, it was in how he carried the Raider name with honor, on and off the field. Gene Upshaw was not just a player, he was the soul of a team, and the beginning of something unforgettable. The second battle, Gene's fight off the field. When Gene Upshaw stepped off the gridiron in 1981, his legacy as a Hall of Fame Raider was already secure. But for Gene, retirement was never about slowing down. It was about stepping into a new arena, one where the stakes were just as high and the battles far more personal. From helmet to suit, championing the players. Not long after hanging up his cleats, Gene took on a new role, executive director of the NFL Players Association. It was uncharted territory, even for a man who thrived in pressure. Now he was not protecting quarterbacks, he was defending the lives and futures of every player who ever wore an NFL jersey. He took the job personally. He had lived the grind, felt the pain, and knew what it meant to be left behind once the stadium lights faded. Under his leadership, the union grew stronger, louder, and more aggressive in its demands for better player health care, post-career benefits, and fair salaries. He fought not just for the stars, but for the linemen forgotten after their final down. Gene negotiated landmark collective bargaining agreements, including the introduction of free agency, a game changer that reshaped the NFL's economic landscape. But it was not always applause and handshakes. Upshaw was criticized at times for siding too often with league executives, for not doing enough on concussion issues, and for holding a tight grip on the union's power. His decisions sparked debate, but his determination was never in doubt. Legacy and conflict, power, and purpose. Through victories and controversy, one truth remained. Gene Upshaw changed the way NFL players lived and left the game. His presence in boardrooms was just as commanding as it had been on the field. He demanded respect. He earned it. To younger players, he was a mentor. To critics, a man navigating impossible tensions. And to himself, Gene was still that relentless kid from Texas. Only now the stakes were not touchdowns, but dignity. He served until the very end, never stepping away from his role, even as his health began to quietly decline. What he built off the field became a pillar of modern football. And yet, as history would show, even giants like Gene Upshaw cannot fight forever. The sudden fall, a champion's final battle. Gene Upshaw had conquered nearly every battle he faced in his life. On the football field, he was a dominant force. Off the field, as an advocate for player rights, he had reshaped the NFL's landscape. But in the summer of 2008, life dealt him a blow he could never have anticipated. In what seemed like an instant, the news rocked the NFL community. Gene Upshaw, the man who had given so much to the game, was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. The diagnosis was as sudden as it was cruel. For someone who had fought for decades for the well-being of others, it was a disease that left even the strongest in its wake. A rapid decline from strength to sickness. Pancreatic cancer is known for its aggressiveness. By the time Gene's diagnosis was confirmed, the disease had already taken a firm hold on his body. The public, who had once admired him for his strength and indomitable spirit, now watched in disbelief as a man who had once fought so fiercely for his teammates and for the future of the NFL began to lose his fight. Not in the spotlight of a stadium, but in the most personal battle of his life. The NFL community, players, coaches, executives, and fans, was stunned by the news. Gene had always been a larger-than-life figure. His deep voice, unwavering commitment, and leadership in the NFLPA made him someone who seemed untouchable, immortal in a way. But now cancer had taken hold, and the man who had been such a pillar for the league was facing something far beyond his control. What made this tragedy all the more heartbreaking was how quickly things unfolded. Gene, who had spent his life fighting for others, was now fighting for his own survival. Yet the disease moved swiftly. In just a few short months after his diagnosis, Gene Upshaw passed away on August 20th, 2008, at the age of 63. It was a loss felt not just by his family and friends, but by the entire NFL community. A legacy cut short, the news of his passing hit the league hard. Players and executives alike paid tribute to the man who had done so much for them. It was as though the very foundation of the NFL had cracked. A moment of silence was observed in stadiums across the country. The loss was not just personal, but symbolic. Gene Upshaw had been the force behind many of the changes that shaped the modern NFL, and with his passing, the league had lost one of its greatest advocates. Despite his immense contributions, there was still so much left for Gene to give. His battle with cancer had stolen his time that could have been spent further improving the game, the players, and the future of the sport. But even in his final days, Gene's legacy was solidified. His work would continue to impact the NFL, and his influence would remain long after his passing. Gene Upshaw's death was not just the loss of a player. It was the loss of a visionary, a leader, and a man whose love for the game would never be forgotten. The forgotten legend. Gene Upshaw's legacy fades in time. Gene Upshaw's contributions to the NFL are immeasurable. Yet with each passing year, his story seems to slip further into the shadows. For a man who helped change the game in so many ways, it is disheartening to see his name fading from the public consciousness, especially among newer generations of fans who never witnessed his greatness on the field. The Raiders have a history filled with iconic figures: Al Davis, Ken Stabler, Howie Long, Tim Brown, and Bo Jackson. These names continue to echo in the hearts of fans, celebrated for their talent, their impact, and the championships they helped win. Gene Upshaw, however, despite his pivotal role in the team's success and his contribution to shaping the league, has become a forgotten figure in comparison. His dominance as an offensive lineman in the 1970s, where he was instrumental in the Raiders' success, is overshadowed by flashier, more celebrated positions. Quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers often steal the spotlight, while the unheralded linemen who paved the way for their success fade into the background. Yet Upshaw was the cornerstone of the Raiders' offensive line, a vital piece of a championship-winning team, and a player whose leadership and skill were crucial for the team's success during one of the most iconic eras in NFL history. A legacy overlooked, a missed opportunity. It is a painful truth that as time goes on, Gene Upshaw's legacy has been overshadowed by other stars. While other Raiders legends' names are chanted in stadiums and remembered in history, Gene often gets lost in the shuffle. His influence on the NFL, especially in his role as executive director of the NFL Players Association, should make him one of the most recognized figures in football. He fought for the rights of players, improved their benefits, and paved the way for a more equitable future in the league. His work gave players the protection they needed, shaping the modern game. Yet his name is rarely mentioned in conversations about the sport's greatest pioneers. Even more heartbreaking is the way younger generations of NFL fans rarely hear his story. Gene Upshaw's story has been neglected by time, and it is a tragedy that someone who changed the course of the league, fought for fairness, and embodied the spirit of the Raiders has not been given the recognition he truly deserves. A story worth remembering. Gene Upshaw was not just another player, he was a trailblazer, a man who helped elevate the entire profession of football. As fans, we owe it to the legends like him to remember and honor their legacies. Gene Upshaw deserves more recognition, not only for his accomplishments on the field, but for his groundbreaking work off the field, which continues to influence the game today. It is time for the NFL and its fans to ensure that his story is not forgotten, but celebrated as one of the most significant chapters in the history of the league. Honoring Gene Upshaw's legacy, a call to remember. Gene Upshaw's impact extends far beyond the Las Vegas Raiders. His influence on the NFL is undeniable. As a cornerstone of the Raiders' success and a pioneering force in the NFL Players Association, Upshaw's work paved the way for the future of the league, fighting tirelessly for player rights, health care, and benefits. His contributions shaped not only the Raiders' dynasty, but the very foundation of the NFL as we know it today. His legacy is woven into the fabric of the sport, yet in recent years it seems to have been forgotten or overlooked by a new generation of fans who may not fully understand his significance. It's time we reflect on the importance of his legacy and honor Gene Upshaw for the trailblazer that he was. He may not have the same recognition as some of the more celebrated figures of the game, but his work and leadership deserve to be remembered and celebrated by fans, players, and the entire football community. Let's come together to remember Gene Upshaw, not just as a legend of the Raiders, but as a true pioneer for the entire NFL. If you have any memories or thoughts about Gene, whether it's from his time on the field, his leadership off the field, or the way he impacted your life, please share them in the comments below. Let's keep his story alive and remind the world just how important his contributions were to the game we all love. Together, we can ensure that Gene Upshaw's legacy is not forgotten. Leave a comment, like, and subscribe to keep his memory and story alive for generations to come.